Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Tonight, what you're about to hear is not fiction, not legends, and not campfire stories invented for shock value. These are three very disturbing military and war-related horror stories, each rooted in real events, real testimonies, and the kind of experiences soldiers rarely speak about once they return home. War is often described with words like bravery, sacrifice, and honor, but beneath all of that lies another truth, a truth made of fear, confusion, and moments so deeply unsettling that they blur the line between reality and something far darker. Listen carefully, because once you hear these stories, it becomes very hard to forget them. The first story comes from the jungles of Vietnam, where war didn't just feel dangerous. It felt alive. Soldiers stationed deep in the jungle quickly learned that the terrain itself was an enemy. The humidity was suffocating, the darkness was complete, and the forest never seemed to sleep. One American infantry unit was assigned to routine night patrols near a remote village that intelligence believed had been abandoned months earlier. On paper, it sounded simple. In reality, nothing in Vietnam ever was. The patrol began just after sunset. The air was thick, and the only sounds were insects and the occasional snap of branches under heavy boots. As the unit approached the village, they noticed something strange. Smoke rose gently from behind the huts, as if cooking fires were still burning. This made no sense. Recon teams had confirmed the village was empty. The commanding officer ordered silence and a slow advance. As they moved closer, another detail became impossible to ignore. The village had no animals, no dogs, no birds. Not even insects seemed willing to stay near it. The jungle, normally deafening at night, went unnervingly quiet. Several soldiers later described this silence as the most frightening moment of their tour, because in Vietnam, silence usually meant danger. They entered the village expecting an ambush, but instead they found rows of neatly arranged huts, bowls of food still warm, and personal belongings scattered as if people had fled in a hurry. One soldier picked up a photograph of a family smiling at the camera. It felt wrong to be there, like they were trespassing somewhere forbidden. Then the screams began. At first, the soldiers thought it was the wind moving through the jungle, but the sounds grew clearer. Human screams, high, pitched and panicked, echoing from the tree line surrounding the village. The radio crackled with static, drowning out attempts to call headquarters. Night vision goggles showed nothing but endless trees. Suddenly, one soldier shouted that something was moving between the huts. The unit raised their weapons, fingers tight on triggers. A shadow darted past them, too fast, too low to the ground. Someone fired. The gunshot echoed violently, but no body fell. Instead, the screams intensified, now mixed with laughter. Several soldiers broke formation, chasing the movement into the jungle, convinced the enemy was using psychological tactics. Minutes passed. Then screams of a different kind came from the darkness, the voices of their own men screaming in terror, begging for help. When the unit rushed toward the sound, they found one of their soldiers kneeling alone, weapon dropped, eyes wide and unblinking. He kept repeating the same phrase over and over. "They're still here. They never left." The missing soldiers were never found. No blood, no bodies, just their abandoned gear along a narrow jungle path that seemed to disappear into the trees. By morning, the village was completely empty again. No smoke, no warmth, no trace that anyone, or anything, had been there at all. Officially, the report stated the soldiers were lost in combat. Unofficially, survivors admitted they felt the village itself had swallowed them. The second story takes place decades later, during the Soviet-Afghan War, high in the frozen mountains where isolation was as deadly as enemy fire. A Soviet reconnaissance unit was tasked with monitoring supply routes near a mountain pass used frequently by Mujahideen fighters. The area was known for sudden snowstorms and brutal conditions, but the soldiers were veterans. They had seen worse, or so they thought. One night, while stationed in a small outpost carved into the mountainside, the soldiers noticed a dim light moving slowly across the distant ridge. Through binoculars it appeared human-shaped, walking steadily despite waist, deep snow. Assuming it was an enemy scout, the commander ordered 2 men to track it. The men followed the figure for nearly an hour. It never looked back. It never changed pace. Finally, when they were close enough to call out, the figure stopped. What they saw froze them in place. The person was wearing an old Soviet uniform, faded and torn, the kind no longer issued. Its face was pale, almost bluish, eyes glassy and unfocused. And yet it was standing there, breathing fog into the cold air. Before either soldier could speak, the figure raised its hand and pointed toward the mountain pass. Then it turned and walked straight off a cliff. Panicked, the soldiers ran to the edge, expecting to see a body at the bottom. There was nothing. No tracks in the snow below. No sign anyone had fallen. Shaken, they returned to the outpost and reported the encounter. The commander dismissed it as exhaustion and cold hallucinations. But over the next several nights, more soldiers reported seeing the same figure, always alone, always silent, always pointing toward the pass before vanishing. Eventually, the commander ordered the unit to investigate the direction the figure indicated. What they found was worse than any ambush. At the base of the pass, buried beneath snow and ice, was the frozen remains of a Soviet platoon lost years earlier during an unreported operation. Their equipment was outdated. Their dog tags identified soldiers officially listed as missing in action. The terrain around them suggested they had been led into a trap or deliberately marched into a killing zone. After recovering the bodies, the sightings stopped. But many soldiers in that unit later claimed the figure had not been warning them of danger. It had been repeating its final mission over and over, unable to stop until someone finally listened. The final story comes from the Iraq War, and unlike the others, it happened in broad daylight. A U.S. Army unit was conducting house-to-house searches in a partially destroyed urban area. The neighborhood had been cleared multiple times, declared secure, yet every patrol reported the same feeling, being watched. During one operation, a squad entered a large, abandoned building believed to be used as an insurgent hideout. Inside, they found strange markings on the walls, written in dark paint or possibly dried blood. The symbols meant nothing to the soldiers, but the air felt wrong. Heavy, oppressive. On the second floor, they discovered a room filled with personal items. Shoes, children's toys, photographs, no bodies. No signs of struggle, just belongings neatly arranged like a display. One soldier noticed a video camera on a tripod, still pointed toward the doorway. Before they could examine it, the radio began picking up distorted voices. Not Arabic, not English, a low, whispering noise layered with faint crying. Then the whispers became clearer, calling out the soldiers' names. Each man heard his own name, spoken in voices they recognized. A mother, a wife, a child. One soldier dropped to his knees, screaming, convinced his dead brother was calling to him from the walls. Another fired his weapon wildly at shadows no one else could see. The commander ordered an immediate evacuation. As they fled the building, explosions rocked the structure, collapsing parts of it behind them. Official reports blamed hidden explosives triggered by movement. But several soldiers swore the explosions began only after the voices stopped, as if the building no longer needed them inside. Later intelligence revealed the building had once been used as a prison by multiple factions, a place of interrogation and execution. Survivors of detention described psychological torture designed to break prisoners without leaving physical marks. Whether the soldiers experienced residual trauma, hallucinations, or something far worse has never been fully explained. Many members of that unit suffered severe nightmares afterward. Some claimed the whispers never stopped. Even back home, they heard voices calling their names in quiet rooms, begging them to come back. War leaves scars that are easy to see, wounds, graves, destroyed cities, but these stories reveal another kind of damage, invisible, lingering, something that follows soldiers long after the last shot is fired. Whether you believe these experiences were caused by stress, coincidence, or something truly unexplainable, one thing is certain. The horrors of war don't always stay on the battlefield, and with that, we've come to the end of tonight's stories. If these accounts unsettled you, that reaction is understandable. These are the kinds of stories that linger in your thoughts when the world grows quiet. Thank you for listening all the way through. If you want to hear more true stories that explore the darker sides of history and human experience, make sure to stay connected. Until next time, stay safe, keep the lights on, and remember some battles never truly end.